Yes. Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome again. If you're welcome back to the room for this joining us now, and also welcome to those joining us online. My name is Luis Guillot. I'm a reporter. I'm a sustainability reporter at POLITICO. And for the first panel of this afternoon, we're going to talk about circularity and take stock of what's been achieved in the last 4 years on especially the new Circular Economy Action Plan that the Commission presented in March, which includes a large number of initiatives, but if I need to name a few, one can think of the revision of product eco-design rules, the packaging and packaging waste rules, the common charger, the right to repair, legislation on substantiating green claims, or also the review of the Waste Framework Directive. So, but before we start the discussion, I'd like to remind you that you can ask questions using the Swapcard platform. And also, don't hesitate to talk about the session on social media using the hashtag #PoliticoSustainableWeek. So joining me on stage this afternoon, I have Virginijus Sinkevičius, European Commissioner for Environment, Ocean and Fisheries. Welcome. MEP Sirpa Pietikäinen, you're from Finland and a member of the European People's Party. You were also, among other things, shadow rapporteur on the initiative report that the European Parliament drafted on the Circular Economy Action Plan when it came out. I also have Justin Wilkes, you're the Executive Director of the Environmental Coalition on Standards, an NGO. Who's been also working on a lot of those initiatives that were presented as part of the Circular Economy Action Plan. And finally, Virginia Jensens, you're the Managing Director of the Industry Association Plastics Europe. Thank you all for joining. And so as I said, the Circular Economy Action Plan and its annex especially had a very long list of key action that the Commission said will be, that the Commission said it will deliver on during the mandate. According to my count, there are about like 30, at least 30 out of the 35 key action that the Commission delivered on. We're still missing some. I condemn here, but I'm probably also forgetting some. But some that we're still awaiting are the review of the treatment of waste oil, for instance, or restriction on certain hazardous substances in electronics. But that we'll see if they will come around because the revision of the chemicals regulation reach is not on the table anymore. But anyway, I'd like to start actually with you, Commissioner Sinkevičius. You know, if you could talk a little bit about the challenges that you faced rolling out all these initiatives on circular economy and the various pieces of legislation. You know, was it difficult to get especially like industry on board with the ideas that the Commission presented?
So good afternoon to all, and thank you very much for having me. I would say, you know, with circular economy, we had this quite nice love story because it's been an action plan with over 35 actions that been truly loved by many, by co-legislators, by the industry as well, and it's always been, I think, within the agreement of the end destination where we want to be. The more of course, the more kind of fluffy language it is, the easier to agree with all. But then when we would go into, of course, the details, some legislation would be, I would say, raising more questions, especially by the industry than the others. Overall,
which ones in particular?
So I would say, of course, that you've read this morning the newest that we planning to change how certain cheeses are packed, which is not true, because it has a very clear exemption with the geographical location. But until there is no general approach from Council, I understand that, you know, approaches will be tried. But for example, extension of eco-design directive, which I thought it's huge legislation going into every, basically product group, touching basically on everything what's around us. With the certain sustainability rules is going to really put us under big pressure. On contrary, I would say it was a very smooth process, and we are now heading hopefully to the final trialogue. I've, as always, expected more from the second trialogue, but I hope that we are now heading to the final one, and hopefully in December we're going to have an agreement which will allow us to close this mega file by the end of the mandate. But packaging is still, I would say, kind of the most debated. But I'm truly proud that we absolutely delivered. We've put those 35 actions with the concrete legislation, and most of that legislation is either proposed or finalized. The latest was end-of-life vehicles, which was also, many within, for example, the Commission was questioning if it's, automotive industry is going to be against it or not. And on contrary, in many of those aspects, I've been meeting myself with the CEO, talking, and they actually are happy about the rules. They do want a level playing field. They do want a secondary raw materials market which is operational, because, we cannot expect to successfully fight plastic pollution, which was introduced here at the beginning, and reach a global agreement, if still, raw material is cheaper than the secondary. So we need to, of course, put a lot of strength into secondary raw materials market to ensure that it's lively and it's cost effective for operators. So there is still, we have delivered, but there is still a long way to go, because the implementation on the ground will be key. And
we'll definitely talk about that a little bit later during the discussion. I'd like now to turn to you, Ms. Pietikäinen. I saw you nodding. So do you feel that the Commission indeed delivered on its promise, or that there's still like some holes to patch maybe when it comes to engaging this paradigm shift and making the economy really truly circular?
Thank you, and hello to everybody. And at the same time, when I'm thanking quite gracefully the Commissioner for all his efforts, I would say that we have at least as much to do than what we have done. And what we need to remember is that, if you remember Janez Potočnik, year 2007, so we've almost lost 20 years. We had the first resource efficiency roadmap and the initials. And already then we knew and we discussed that we need to have a binding target for industries, industry sectors, the whole Europe and member states. Remember, we need to reach by 2050 tenfold resource efficiency. Though this is not this kind of a linear small attempt where we are trying to tweak details here and there. This is a major change on the principle, and that's why I agree that the Eco-Design Directive is the most important. Design out of the waste. Plastic is not good or bad, or paper is not, or pulp or whatever material is not good or bad. You have just wrong materials on wrong uses. And that is very much dependent on designers and the industries to get the point, plus then to think out of the box to have the benchmark in adequate level, tenfold resource efficiency in 20 years. And then without going in details, yes, we should have the target as binding target, like what we have debated in climate. Yes, we should have indicators that are harmonized and used in company reporting, and they should be, of course, global in the long run, but at least in EU level, and you should benchmark industries, companies, and also member states. So this is, I think, that the most important. So we are too complacent with us, and we also in the Parliament, so this is not only eyeing the Commission that has been far more radical than the Council, and sometimes even the Parliament, I have to acknowledge. And then the second what I would like to raise there is the wish what the Parliament sent its circular economy report, and that is the sustainable digitalization. And we have not yet had, because you have had many other issues in the agenda, the proposal, but think of the energy consumption, the fact that chips are coming all over the places, and if they are not durable, what kind of artificial altering of goods it's going to do. Think of all the other factors. So we should, ahead of the problem, try to solve it in European level. Not an easy task.
Indeed, and we indeed touch upon the topics of chips and the sustainability earlier this morning. So the question of the target and the material footprint of the EU is something also that NGOs like yours, Mr. Wilkes, talked about and also pointed as one of the missing topic of that the Circular Economy Action Plan didn't address. So why do you think it's so important to have this like clear numerical target in the action? In the action plan, at least for the EU.
So I think from our perspective, I think targets are very important to give the direction of travel and to give the level of ambition that's needed. And we do need quite a high level of ambition on sustainability. The circular economy is going to be absolutely crucial to deliver sustainability. The World Bank has pointed out that current global demand for natural resources exceeds our planet's regenerative capacity by a factor of 1.75. And we'll need 3 planets by 2050 if we continue as we are. At the moment, 7% of our economy is circular. And we are moving towards circularity by about 0.4 percentage points per year, according to the European Court of Auditors. So we have a lot of work to do. And I think the Circular Economy Action Plan has been a very positive development, and I think very well delivered by and large, with obviously some exceptions. I think a key piece of legislation for ECOS has been the extension of the Eco-Design Directive to non-energy related product sectors. We've been calling for that move since the previous commission, so a good 8 years, 10 years. So ECOS is very pleased that that is now happening. The Eco-Design Directive rightly focuses on design. 80% of environmental impact of products is designed in or is defined at the design phase. So it's very crucial that we do tackle design. Also, I think very successful from the European Commission has been the common charger, and I think quite an interesting history of failed voluntary agreements by industry, technological developments, as well as standardization developments did allow for a common charger to come forward. The batteries legislation, I think, has also been very successful, tackling also social issues and waste issues, and also, I think, a very promising textiles strategy. Obviously, we see whether the Commission delivers on that. I could also mention right to repair, but I think you discussed that this morning, so I won't do that. In terms of, I think, where the strategy has fallen short is on construction products. I'm still waiting for a strategy on sustainable built environment. We have a construction products regulation that does move forward in terms of circularity, but not enough. Too much political decisions, too much environmental ambition decisions are left to the standardizers. And I think that's very troubling, and we will see some very challenging discussions moving forward. ECOS will push very hard for low-carbon cements and concrete. We run an alliance for low-carbon cement and concrete, and we will have quite a challenge in the years ahead of moving towards a performance-based approach for cement, even though the CPR insists as a legal requirement that construction standards are performance-based.
Thanks. And I'd like also to bring you, Ms. Jensen, to the discussion here, because we've seen that there's been a lot of legislative proposal being discussed in the last couple of years, but also like member states also coming up with their own sometimes legislation. I'm thinking, for example, of France, which has been particularly active in rolling out certain certain new laws on circular economy. And so, can you tell us a little bit more about what the sentiment among the industry is? Is there any also concerns of overlapping legislation or fragmentation of the single market when it comes to indeed like building the more circular economy?
Yeah, before I go into we need harmonization and a stronger EU with please one circular economy and not 27 circular economies, I would like to stress what is good about the action plan, because it did bring overall this ambition, which across all stakeholders, also the industry, and I've just presented to you the roadmap as well. I would dare to say that also it's instruments like those in Europe that also help to lend those kinds of roadmaps that we have now published as one sector in Europe. It's also important to state what is good as the world is looking at us in our sustainability journey and leadership. So indeed, then to the question on what can we improve, I mean, the jury is still a little bit out in terms of there's many legislative files, and the previous speakers, automotive, construction, so many of where we are, the plastics value chain are impacted. It's also packaging, of course, which is a little bit less of 40% of the plastics market. So the jury is out in terms of finalizing those legislative files, whether it's now or in the next mandate, and then of course to see what the biggest impact will be on the, for instance, if we take the packaging regulation, the biggest impact there will be the secondary legislation in terms of, devil in the detail, in terms of when it comes to measuring or reporting on recycled content reuse.
And I'm sorry, I'm just going to stop you there, because we're going to have also another session just after this one, specifically on the packaging regulation, so we can definitely talk a little bit more about this. But is there really a concern indeed among the industry that there will be 27 circular economies? Or
yeah, but this is one of the concerns that, of course, we keep on asking and pleading on our knees for the EU policymakers to help, and for the Commission to be that safeguard, so that indeed that we can keep it all together, because we need the scale to innovate in our green transition. So that is for sure. But another element I would say is our competitiveness. I raised it before. It's not a joke. We need to be able to transition, if we want to transition fast with the finances that will require and the investments. We also can use some help and some political will from the European Commission and the EU policymakers to support industry. So not only targets, I would say, yes, for the travel of direction, but also those incentives, and also using the convening power, I would say, from the policymakers in terms of creating that stakeholder dialogue to get going.
And actually on that, I'd like to turn to you, Commissioner, to know how you're also addressing this risk of fragmentation among the 27 EU economies. Is that something you're worried about? And how are you addressing that specifically?
Well, correct, but I think this is exactly what we are doing with our proposals and the circular economy action plan, with all the actions in it, because all those actions, they are to be implemented by 27 member states. If we would leave it basically, uncharted waters and would raise a glorious targets of circularity, but without a legislation, then we would be actually running into a risk of having 27 circular economy, which I would say is currently the case. We see probably member states like France and the Netherlands, who have started early on and do have a already solid understanding and are far ahead of most of the member states. And then we have a couple member states who still don't have even circular economy action plan confirmed. So I think it is extremely important that the legislation that we have put forward is actually going through the co-legislation process and then being implemented by 27 member states, because this is the only certainty for the operators, for businesses. They know what rules are applied, where we are heading, and what to expect. Otherwise, I think we are truly running into a risk that each member state goes their own direction, usually where they have some, historically practices or what they've, good at doing, and just forgetting the rest, and we cannot afford. Yeah. That's why we are, trying to have this legislation which takes into account the differences among 27, takes into account the worries and demands from the industry. And, let's not be naive. It's going to be an enormous task of implementation. We're still at low numbers of circularity. And if you go into then sector by sector, you will spot that in some sectors, it's just, pioneering steps.
Ms. Pietikäinen, I think you also wanted to comment or react to that?
Yes, actually, this would be my plea for the industry and industry associations. Please do, with your companies, lobby the local governments in our member states, and please do lobby also the parliament on this point. Because if we do not have a strong, clear and harmonized EU regulation, that is what you end up having, this kind of a patchwork of 27 different models. And then again, it is not effective on competitiveness, industry policy-wise, and it is not effective for the circular economy, because you can't sort of create these small bubbles of circularity in many cases. You need the whole internal market. Plus, then the third point I find very important, it's the level playing field. If you look at the Eco-Design Directive, according to WTO rules, we can apply it to all products and packing that is introduced and brought to European markets. So it has an indirect impact. But if we do not have the regulation, then we are on the mercy of global unfair competition. And this is something that the politics is not very good at seeing in total, and seeing this, how big the challenge is. Because, of course, quite legitimately, those companies that are laggards, that do not yet get the point, they are not bad guys, but they just don't know. They don't get the point yet. So they lobby against us, say, no, we shouldn't do an administrative burden and no regulation, and markets and companies by themselves can solve it. No, they can't. Because if what you are doing is always more troublesome, if we have fossil fuel subsidies in our budgets and our public procurement favors bad quality produced in third countries and all that, no, the good industry cannot compete. And this is, the good industry is, of course, for the environment, but for our innovation and future, that is the lifesaver we need to take care about.
Mm-hmm. And so, Mr. Wilkes, I would also like to get your views on that, and also maybe, what is still missing as well from this big puzzle that the Commission put in place, also as we are looking forward to the next EU election. Like, what are some of the topics, the issues, the aspects that maybe we need to look more into? Ms. Pietikäinen was just mentioning harmful subsidies, for example. This, of course, can be a driver of unsustainable consumption, but I'd be keen to hear your view on this.
Yeah, I think from my perspective, it is key that Europe does take the lead in circular economy. I think a European circular economy will be easier to implement than 27 national circular economies. And I also do want to highlight that there is also a rather large economy, a rather large market outside of the single market. The European Union currently imports about half of the resources it consumes. So when we're talking circularity, when we're thinking sustainability, we also do need to look outside of the single market as well. Cooperation will be the key, I think, to an economically efficient and effective circular economy, delivering sustainability. From a economic perspective, and apologies for speaking economics rather than environment, McKinsey have highlighted that a circular economy can save 1.8 trillion per year by 2030 in terms of reduced pollution, reduced resource consumption, and increased economic activity. A circular economy is good for the economy, is good for jobs and good for European jobs. If you look at material reduction, European companies can save between 250 and 465 billion euros in terms of material costs. That's between 12 and 23% of their material costs. So I think there are some very interesting economic gains that can be made from being the first mover from a circularity perspective. I think there are interesting lessons to be learned from member states. France has an interesting approach from circularity in construction. Germany has interesting deposit return schemes. Slovenia is interesting from a green public procurement perspective, as is Italy from a green public procurement perspective as well. Hungary and Finland are not. Don't look for too much green public procurement there because there's no framework.
But I'd like to quickly go back also to a point that Ms. Pietikäinen just raised before, and I'd like to ask you, Ms. Janssens, about it, because Ms. Pietikäinen said some industries still, or some companies still don't really get that they need to do more to become more circular. Do you agree with that? That some are still lagging behind? And what especially in your sector?
Okay, because I can't speak for all the sectors.
No, it's in your sector in particular.
But look, well, thanks for the question, but I'll just bridge it again to the roadmap, because it's the first time one could say we're fairly late, and there are other sectors who already published their net zero roadmaps. But I have to say it is quite an achievement for our very diverse industry to unite around those similar goals. So it is with proudness I am here today. Of course, it's still a starting point, but so I would say that the mindset is there, the will is there, the investments, the planned investments, and now it's about creating that framework in Europe to accelerate on those ambitions and the path that we have set. And as I mentioned as well, we have to do lots ourselves. We need to get on with it, but we cannot do it alone. So we are reaching out to our value chain partners, so not only supply chain, but also policymakers to help establish that.
I'm already going to look at some of the questions that we received online on the platform. I see we have a couple, so I'm going to put them to our panel and keep them coming, obviously, as we reach slowly the end of our session. But we still have about 15 minutes, so keep them coming. One is actually directed at you, Commissioner, so I'm going to read it out loud. It's from Ko Vuskoilen. Sorry if I mispronounced that. Is the Commission working on a policy to stimulate the use of sustainable carbon in the chemical sector, for example, for recycled plastics, mechanically or chemically, and what is needed?
So at this moment, we are focusing on, I would say, much more on the proposals that we have already put forward in order to finalize them by the end of the mandate, and we do not intend to put any new proposals before the end of the Commission's mandate, but also the Parliament's mandate, as we are having now really short window. And as always, we try to finalize. I looked at my agenda. There are days where I have 3 trialogues per day, so it means 18 hours working day. I don't think so. We have an opportunity even to put new complex proposals. Plus, it was my sort of position from the very beginning that Green Deal we knew from the very start is going to be complex, which has a lot of proposals. If we are serious about the Green Deal, not just a sort of nice lozung for 2019 elections, but as regards the implementation, we knew that it's a revolution. And to do it, we, of course, will have to put many proposals on the table, and we cannot leave industry in the limbo. So I think there is time where you just stop putting new proposals and maybe leave something for the next mandate, but you also have to finalize them as much as you can, because otherwise industry is in the limbo and they don't know what is going to be the will of a new parliament, newly formed commission, how it's going to look like, and etc. And time goes. That's also important for our international ambition as regards the circularity. I think we have shown leadership in many fronts. And again, I don't think so we have a luxury to lose this leadership position, knowing that global agreement on stopping plastic pollution is another big thing where I truly hope that EU will keep on playing a key role, and that EU's legislation is going to be very, very close to the one that is adopted on the international level.
Mm-hmm. I see. Really interesting. Ms. Pietikainen, I'd like to turn back to you and also ask, if you want to react to this question as well, but also ask you about, what are you looking forward beyond the next election? What do you think the next commission should be focusing on?
Actually, and thank you for posing the question, because that was going to be my answer anyway, that I think that we would need to leave, as Commissioner mentioned, something for the next Commission also. And we would need to see that the Green Deal is not one slot issue. It's going to be a permanent, like common agricultural policy. So yes, we do need the Green Deal #2, and I hope that you could be supportive to push that on the next Commission's agenda. There are a lot of issues there, like next steps on sustainable finance, the constructions, the sustainable buildings initiative, the sustainable digitalization, the REACH that is now on block, and then a big part, it is the whole concept, what is a circular CO2? And how do we create it? And there's a lot of thought yet to be done, how to put it in regulation. So be very assorted that the list is long and going on, and we need this sort of a regulatory consistency and certainty for the industries. But I think that this was pretty good achievement for the Commission to come up with this whole list of regulation. And I hardly think that the industries or member states could have endured to take much more in these terms. So we'll continue the journey.
Mm-hmm. But so I understand correctly, does that mean that you're not advocating for like some kind of regulatory pause for
No, definitely not. And the reason for that is that, sorry for this very gross reference, but if you have a cancer and they say, now you can work with that, you hate the medication, you hate the radiation therapy, you hate the operation, you don't love them, but you don't tell to the doctor, yuck, no, I won't take those, plus I can't fit it in my calendar. I just would like to continue as it is. Maybe I'll come back after 2 years, and then if it is serious, let's see if we do something. And now when we are still on the early stages, and we can do, and it is learning by doing for all the partners, politicians, regulatory framework, industry associations, businesses, we need this kind of an ecosystems. We better do it and not to postpone, and that's why it is a totally stupid idea to have 5 years sort of a pause on doing things and just implementing, because this is the sort of a let's make the next appointment after 5 years and let's see where we are then approach.
Okay. Mr. Wilkes, I'd like to also ask you the same question. Like, what do you wish for the next Commission after 2024?
I think in terms of what we need is absolutely not start-stop policies. Start-stop policies bring less environmental impact, and they also bring higher costs. They're less efficient, they're less effective. So we do absolutely need to continue. There will be a lot of implementation work to be done. ECOS does a lot of delegated act works. We do a lot of standardization work. We're still working on the single-use plastics in terms of tethering the cap to the bottle and also in terms of circular fishing gear. So we're still doing that, and the single-use plastics proposal was finished quite some time ago at the legislative level. For us, I think we need to continue. We do need targets. We do need material use reduction targets. Those will be absolutely critical, and the World Bank, I think, has been very helpful here, talking about a comprehensive package of circular economy policies that will allow Europe to reduce its material use by around 10% and achieve an absolute decoupling of growth and virgin reuse within the decade. So that is not, that is the World Bank saying that. So I think we still need to continue. We need that ambition. We need that visibility and vision for industry moving forward.
And I'd like also to ask you the question, Ms. Janssen, what do you wish for the next Commission and beyond the 2024 election?
Yeah. Sorry, I'm always a bit annoying. I'm not always answering your question first, but let me just, there is an urgency for this mandate still, and that is, and Justin, you referred to it, the Single-Use Plastics Directive and the implementing acts that member states are still working on as we speak, because this is both a very technical, and now I'm talking about the methodology around recycled content and measuring. So this is actually both a very technical discussion, but also very political and economic at the same time. My members have planned investments of 8 billion euro in chemical recycling in Europe, and it will actually depend on the outcome of those implementing acts and the measurement methods, whether or not some of those investments will still take place in Europe or not. So that is an immediate clarity that we would need. And then for the next, of course, and Sirpa, you said it well, the circular CO2. So this is, of course, when we have our net zero ambition, we will not be able to drive this alone. So it's this enabling this framework for low carbon infrastructure, the hydrogen, so that all needs to electrification, so that all needs to take place with policymakers and value chains. So that is something that we will need to work on in the next mandate. And then also back to the competitiveness as well. We can use more support from the EU policymakers to help us to restore our lost competitiveness, to help us transition faster, and to enable us much more to invest and innovate on those technologies and new technologies that are needed to accelerate, hopefully then that I can, course correct upwards on our ambitions in our roadmap as well. So these are some of the bigger elements that we will need to focus on. And
does that mean you're looking for more funding, especially from EU, like financial support, or?
First and foremost, it's the framework, enabling policy framework. There is some targets, smart targets that we can set, but it's not only about targets, it's also the incentives. And with incentives, it could just be more support or using the convening power of the EU policymakers to get us all in the room and get going, as we will need that collaboration, all of us, right? So these are so it's not only just funding, and there could be public-private funding, but it's of course first and foremost for industry to invest and innovate, but we need to have that space, that room, and a bit of trust would also be nice.
Okay, yeah. Trust, indeed. And I'd like to because one common element in all your answers was that the next Commission really needs to focus on implementation. And we've known that, especially on eco-design policy, the Commission needs a lot of additional staff and also financial and budget to actually work on this policy. So, Commissioner Sinkevičius, is that a priority that you're going to try and already implement before the end of your mandate as a commissioner, or and is that something that you wish the next Commission is going to increase budget, notably for eco design in DG Environment and other DGs working on that?
You see, with the budget increase, it's not that simple. If Commission could just increase its own budget, probably, we wouldn't be debating, and every time we would have done that. But it's not that easy. It's co-legislators, member states, and etc. No, so we've started this parallel work from the very beginning because we knew that on eco-design, as I've said, each group will have certain sustainability rules, which of course is going to be extremely important if we are truly able to reach certain goals that we have trying to achieve, because most of the sustainability can be enshrined in the design stage. So of course it's going to be crucial step, but this is an immense amount of work which DG Environment in particular, but also partly DG Grow will do, and of course they will need a significant additional resources. I think overall this mandate have shown that Green Deal have put on certain DGs enormous amount of work, of workload, and I'm truly thankful to all the people who have contributed. I know that they've put their hearts, their long hours into that legislation, which we could deliver, and therefore I think it's our duty and task to defend it and finalize it by the end of the mandate, giving also an absolute clarity for the industry, because when industry says about using Commission's convincing power, I refer it to a clear legislation to member states and ensuring, using Commission's right as a guardians of the treaty, that member states implement it, because otherwise that convincing power is probably some discussions with member states which not necessarily end up with the result, but I think it's absolutely key. But also member states, they have a lot to gain, and they have to realize that potential of the circularity is immense. Therefore, I think that's why industry, that's why co-legislators have supported it through the whole process, because it can create true green resilient jobs, local ones. It does not require to be, some high-skilled ones. Even so, those two. It immensely puts off the pressure from our biodiversity, as the extraction of resources is less needed. But most importantly, angle was mentioned. We understand that we living in a very difficult geopolitical period, and our supply chains dependency can be a big issue, and we already experienced that with certain supply chains being disrupted with the first signals coming through the COVID. So circular economy can significantly decrease that dependency on certain supply chains. So there is a lot of wins. So we need a political willingness of 27 to implement, and I believe that it's not only next Commission, but also next Parliament will be the carriers of the circular economy. We've went a long way. I think the understanding is much better there. So therefore, we need to contribute our time, resources, political willingness to implement it.
Thank you very much, Commissioner. And I see that our time is actually up. But thank you very much for your insights and your comments. I think it was a very lively discussion. So on this note, I have to conclude our discussion on the Circular Economy Action Plan. And I'd like to thank our distinguished speakers for their comments. Maybe we can give them a round of applause. Thank you. Thank you very much also for submitting your questions. I'm sorry we didn't get to go through all of them, but I'm sure we can. I saw there was also one on the packaging regulation, so maybe the next panel will actually address that specific point. So I'd like to ask our audience in the room to remain seated because the next panel is going to start in just a few minutes. The topic is indeed the revision of the packaging and packaging waste regulation, moderated by my colleague Leonie Kater. Thank you very much.
Thank you.